here. Let everybody know
Okay.
we're
Can I just
joining
ask
on.
a real quick question before are we live?
We're live, but you can go
Okay.
ahead.
Too much chat, too many questions about travel. I love asking people about their travel.
Yeah, so I know I'm inspired by how Char is able to get around, so it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's interesting because I've been running my business and literally living the model of remote leading in the time of COVID. And it's been an interesting process. And my employees, I think when they get initially they were a little shocked what was going on, but now they see the method to what we're doing and the fact that we have not lost contact, that we do Zoom calls. We visit them in person every month. So my partner and I travel back in person every month. So they physically see us. They see us on Zooms. We do the one-on-ones. We do the phone calls. And, you don't always have to see people totally face to face. But we still give them that opportunity every month, So it's been great. In general, because our locations are all physically distanced anyway. I mean, most of our locations are in Colorado and also Montana. So it was never really possible to sit down face to face all the time anyway. So, and I would say now that we've been in Mexico and Belize, it's given me a little more cultural sensitivity as relative to understanding languages, language barriers. And obviously, Sumit, no, I have not gone to India yet. So I guess that'll be another adventure.
Oh, I'm sure it will, Char, especially if you're going to be driving around.
Okay, well, you take driving in a golf cart in Belize, because we were on San Pedro Island, and San Pedro is an island off Belize City, and there's no transportation except for golf carts. And since I'm the better driver, if not hearing me, I mean, we're buzzing around, it's like kind of crazy city driving in a golf cart.
Real quick, because I know we have listeners joining in. So we're going to be, we're just chatting. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes.
Yep, the dogs are going to take it away.
I know, it seems like.
Oh, absolutely,
I can't wait.
So they have their own people strategies forum going on, I think.
Yeah,
yes.
sounds like
Doggy strategy.
What types of dogs are they?
Well, we all have different dogs. Sam, what are your dogs? You've got a ton of them.
Oh, so yeah, so my pets, my kids have get their pets from the pound, so they're always wanting to save one. So we have we have a new puppy that's they usually come in my area in Colorado. We live really close to an Indian reservation where there's ranching, and they run cattle and so forth, and so there's a lot of cattle dogs that are available, which are typically blue heelers or Australian shepherds. And so we have both. We have an Australian shepherd and a blue heeler that we've rescued from one of those places. So
do they have like the black and white spots or like the fur?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
so cute. Yeah, I fostered one for a couple of days and she was the sweetest little thing. But I'm in an apartment, so I was like I wanted to adopt her, but without a yard, I was like, I know they're work dogs. They're just, it's in their blood to run around and round up cattle. So I was like, nah, that wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, and Sumit, you have a cat, right? You don't have a dog, but you have a.
No, I have a dog and 2 cats.
Oh, you have a dog and 2 cats.
But you haven't seen the dog because she doesn't really walk across the keyboard at times. So one of the cats does. It's a good thing, yes.
And I have this beautiful white German Shepherd.
Travel with him, that's awesome.
Yeah, say hi. So she is a beautiful white German Shepherd.
Uh,
And then I also have a red German Shepherd.
They're beautiful.
So yeah.
They're such smart breeds.
And it's fascinating though, traveling as much as I do to see all the beach dogs and.
Oh, we got another one.
Because every beach we go to, there's literally like 5 or 6 beach dogs. They're very well taken care of. Everybody's feeding them steaks and, they're very spoiled on the beach. And our dogs play with the beach dogs.
I love
I don't know if they're owned by anybody, but I think some of them are. They're just kind of more the vendors' dogs, I guess.
Sumit, I know you're just showing us your dog. What is your dog's name?
Her name is Chia, like the seeds.
Oh,
yeah.
Super sweet. I love it. I know.
Great. So our listeners out there, we're about to get started in about 2 minutes. So we're just chatting real quick about our pets.
Well, I do think during these times of COVID and all the other stuff that our pets have become very important from mental health standpoint, and gets us outside and gets us to focus on more than just the doldrums of what's going on the television. And
yes,
I think it's a very positive thing if you do decide to have pets or adopt, which I think is even more important. Adopt a pet in need right now. Really cool.
I started fostering during quarantine because before I was traveling so much, I was never home. And it has just been such an experience. My boyfriend talked me into it. I was like, I don't know, I don't really, I don't have much dog experience. I was always I grew up with cats mostly, but it has been so rewarding. It is just, like you said, Char, you forget about everything else in the world because you're too busy looking after a puppy and cleaning up after it and chasing it and all that. But it really, it just mental health, emotional support. I used to think emotional support dogs, what is that? But now I understand it. Now I'm like, okay, I'm on that page.
Yeah, I think it's really healthy, particularly right now for people, going through some challenges. Taking care of another little being is fantastic. And it gives us exercise.
Yeah, forces you
That's
out.
True, yeah.
Sure.
Believe me.
Do your dogs travel in the plane with you? Do they have the?
Yes. Yeah, that's been an art form in itself, that's for sure.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're at the top of the hour here.
Yes. Sam ran away.
Oh, there's Sam. Hi, Sam.
All right. You ready to kick things off?
Sure am.
All righty. Okay, so we were just talking about our dogs. So hopefully if you have a dog out there, you appreciate that little side chatter. But everyone, welcome to the People Strategy Forum. We're very excited that you're here. We have some amazing speakers for you today. It's going to be a great session. So take notes, get comfortable, grab your coffee. And if you have been here before, welcome back. And if it's your first time, it's going to be a great session. If you don't know about the People Strategy Forum, it is a mastermind of leaders dedicated to creating workplaces where people thrive, employers reward, and customers love. So just to introduce the speakers, actually, let's take it back. I'm going to introduce Sam. Right in the middle there, he is the reason why we're here. He is the man behind the People Strategy Forum and is the CEO and founder of Comp Team. And our two wonderful speakers, on the left, you'll see Char. So Char is a people strategist and she has a lot of HR experience. She is the founder of HR with a Heart. And then we also have Sumit. He'll be speaking to us today as well. And he has a wealth of knowledge about HR. He has consulted with firms like Deloitte and Accenture. And so I'm going to give the floor to them and enjoy the session. And just before they get into it, I want to just let you know that we want this to be really interactive. We want to get to know you. We don't want it to just be, we're talking to you. So please chat with us in the chat box. If you have any questions, I'm going to be fielding those as well and asking them as they come up. So please don't be shy. We want this to be really fun, again, really interactive. So put all your questions in the chat box and we'll make sure they get answered. Okay, Char and Sumit, floor is yours.
Well, hi, Sumit.
Hi, Char, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm very excited to talk about this topic.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure it's a topic that's as close to your heart as it is to mine, and hopefully it'll be a really fun conversation with a lot of people participating and us learning a lot from them as well.
Well, exactly. I think both of us have had a lot of experience supporting very large organizations with their succession management strategies. And I'll tell you that it now needs to be reimagined, very much so. I think that what happened was, in my personal experience, 6 to 7 years ago, what I thought about succession management, and now becoming a company owner of my own company, I definitely think a succession management is completely different than whatever I thought of it before. So I'm so excited that you and I are going to partner and really talk about this reimagined perspective of succession.
So what strikes me as interesting about succession, Char, is that it's not even a modern term. It comes from the ancient times when there used to be kings and emperors, and they would have a successor, somebody who's kind of being schooled to take on the throne. And typically, of course, that used to be a family affair, but you'd find people getting schooled in succession right from an early age. So you'd have, because of course it was a patriarchal world, you'd have the sons getting groomed to take on after the father, but they would undergo training in martial arts, diplomacy, politics, and a lot of other skills, and then get ready for the role. So, in a way, it's a little sad that even though succession has been happening for thousands of years, we still, in our modern firms, we still have a lot to learn about it, and we're probably approaching a lot of things about succession completely the wrong way.
You know, and as you say that, I find that fascinating, because even in the traditional, you talk about traditional masculinity, even in traditional femininity, succession management was happening even back in the day, where the women were at home learning to cook and sew and weave, and make baskets and hunt and gather. All of those things were happening even in a feminine standpoint. So it is definitely part of our history. Obviously, we've changed. So roles are very different today. But, it is so vital to our civilization as a whole.
I couldn't agree more. And that's what brings me to a number. So there's research which says that, unfortunately, a lot of people find it easier to find new roles outside their current firms, because there's no succession happening in their workspaces at all. And this is a research data point which says more than 50% people are forced to look outside because there are no succession opportunities within the organization for them. I mean, isn't that shocking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very shocking. And I have been in that place. I mean, I think a lot of times, we think of quote HR programs, which I don't really like that term very much anymore. But it seemed like the word succession management was always kind of at the bottom of the priority list. And it was, then there becomes like an emergency. All of a sudden it's like, holy mackerel, we're having a key position individual leave. It does not have to be the person at the top. It's a key position that's very vital to our organization. And suddenly the organization's put in an emergency situation. And I love this visual, because it's like pulling a sword out of a stone. It's like all of a sudden we're in an emergency. The executive or CEO is saying, why are we in this position? We haven't planned ahead. And, it unfortunately, because of a lack of strategy of forethinking, that we needed succession management as part of our overall talent management strategy from the very beginning.
Agreed. And for the longest time, such an important process has been treated as an optional add-on. So, all right, if we've got a little bit of budget remaining, let's see if we can devote it to developing people internally. Or I don't have the time this month. Maybe we should talk about succession next month. And that's what leads us to this kind of a situation where in a modern boardroom as well, you've got the ancient legend of King Arthur, where he pulls out his sword from a stone and succeeds the king. So we don't have the science behind succession planning. There still are major failures happening in succession. And one of my favorite stories of when succession failed was a very recent one. So I do keep talking a lot about sports, and a lot of my insights that I share coming from the sports arena. So one of the biggest football or soccer clubs in the world is Manchester United. A few years ago, one of their topmost and most successful managers ever was retiring. And he decided to bring in his own successor. So he chose a successor, and he felt because he was a Scotsman, another person who was from Scotland would do a good job. So he brought in somebody. The person practically destroyed 30% of the market capitalization, lost the support of the players, lost the support of the fan base, and the club, even after 7 years of this gentleman's departure, is still trying to grapple with the financial and the reputational fallout of succession going wrong. And that's absolutely terrible. Of course, I feel very good telling this story because I don't like that club at all. So watching them crash and burn is deeply satisfying, but it does speak to how succession planning can go wrong and destroy a lot of organizational value.
Well, I would agree. I think if it's often done wrong, and I have sat in more modern boardrooms where everyone goes around the table and says, well, who's your successor? And oftentimes the individual say, Joe Blow, he's my right-hand man. He's my go-to person, without any input or insight or critical dialogue about if this is really the right person to set them up for success. And unfortunately, I've seen it done as an exercise and not fully integrated into the entire talent management strategy process. And all too often I've seen this fail. And what's really sad is that individual, like you mentioned from your sports analogy, what an embarrassment and sad for that person's career that they were put through that when they really were not the right fit for the role, and they were not groomed or supported by the team. It's really unfortunate, and actually can lead to an organizational's demise. So vital right now, and particularly during these COVID times and times of economic challenge and upheaval in our society. This is now the time to really focus on succession planning.
Absolutely. And what you said is absolutely phenomenal, because like the bottom of the slide indicates, interestingly, most leaders believe that succession planning is essential, but they also realize that they're terrible at doing this. And thinking of it, it's a fairly straightforward process where you identify people who've got the right kind of potential, and you turn those people into leaders. So you're creating an entire pipeline of people who can take on new roles, who can staff those roles as the incumbents retire, leave. or move up or around the organization. So it should be fairly straightforward that the need is to identify folks with high potential. But it's unfortunate that uh, we're not using the right tools. We're not really figuring out who's got the right potential at all.
Well, absolutely. And I would tell you one thing, that even in my own company, the rules of my company have shifted so much in less than 1 year, just because of the environmental factors and what's happened. So we've had to realign people's positions dramatically, including our senior leaders. And who would have expected that this phenomenon would have happened? Who would have expected it? And I think that the fact that I built an agile organization that had the ability to flex so quickly and be able to maneuver people because of their talents, I think is a big reason why my company's thriving during these difficult times.
Yeah. So I have a quick question based on that. I mean, so when we think about, the shock to the market, like what's happened, and jobs somewhat change, maybe the company has a new set of values that they're going forward at. And I'm just wondering, Sumit, if in your experience, when a company's gone through this shock, so maybe the person that they originally identified as a successor may not be the right person for the future, given this new direction. But we've worked on grooming this person and so forth. What should be done in a situation like that? I mean, do we need to evaluate to see, maybe if we can change the mindset or of this particular individual, or maybe I don't know. I mean, have you seen situations like that?
Yes, Sam. So in fact, I've seen three life-changing kind of scenarios happening during my career. One of the biggest changes was, so I used to be an intern back then when the entire subprime crisis happened and markets went tumbling all over the world. So I used to work with Microsoft at that point of time, and incidentally, my project was all around succession planning. So I was working with the India HR head and the India talent head of the organization. And we were trying to figure out a succession strategy for the organization. So based on what changed and how they had to realign and restructure the entire organization in a matter of weeks, not even months, a lot of the succession planning flew out of the window, and we had to figure out what are the changes, how the skills that are needed are going to be different. Are there certain roles that have become completely redundant now, and it makes no sense to have successors for them? But do those people have the potential to take on some other roles? So that's where the concept of behavioral and technical potential comes into the picture. So you need to have people with the right technical skills. More importantly, you need to have people who can embrace ambiguity, who can, and I'll borrow from the question that you asked, who've got the right mindset. So it's easier to have a tool set. It's not easy to have the right mindset. And so those are the people we need to identify, because tool sets can be provided. We can train people on that. A mindset takes much longer to build. And if people have the growth mindset rather than a fixed one, I think that really works well.
Yeah, so there's just a quick story. There's a situation that I had a client, and they were in the construction industry, and I was working on their compensation, of course. But then I had brought in a partner that was helping them with succession planning, and so she was working with one executive who had a successor that had all the right skill sets, but the behaviors were needed to get a little bit worked on. So she was coaching on that piece, and at the same time, this is a rapidly growing large construction company, and the HR manager wanted to increase the amount of diversity. As you can imagine, in a lot of construction companies, they're male dominated, and so they were working on bringing more females in the leadership and administrative structure and so forth, and also out in the field. And this new leader that they had in succession really had some some old-fashioned male-dominated type views, and it was a huge problem on getting him groomed. And so that the company took the choice at that particular time to try to work on his coaching and personally, and of course it was a year as they were going through this process, and I didn't see the end result, but it was a very hard road for them to take and to change this person's mindset. So I imagine that can be a pretty big hurdle.
And it also depends on what kind of leaders you're working with. So a story that comes to mind is when I was in my first job, and there were a lot of folks like me who were trying to carve out their careers, make a space in the corporate world. And we all of us, we used to be really territorial, and whatever we knew, we would guard it with our life, saying, no, I can't really share this information or this skill with somebody else, because then it'll make me absolutely useless, and somebody else will get to the next level faster and use my skill set. And the best advice ever that I might have got came from one of the senior managers there. And their advice was that if you want to grow in an organization, make yourself redundant. So focus on growing people like you. Whatever skill, whatever behaviors you display, make sure that there are at least 5 other people who are doing that. Otherwise, you'll never ever move up or move into a new role in your life. And initially, of course, the reaction was that this is absolute and utter nonsense. It doesn't make any sense at all. But I think after resisting that advice for some time, when I finally got around to following it, it just made so much sense.
Right. Well, I was just laughing at what Jules put in the chat there. Mic drop, Sumit. So one of the pieces that I was thinking about as well, and I've witnessed this several times in other companies when they've identified a successor. Sometimes that is an executive or leader may feel a bit threatened by that if they weren't involved in the process, and have left the company to leave this junior person to kind of fend for themselves. And so I think that that's an example of where succession it can go wrong and it wasn't communicated appropriately. Have you seen that in your experience?
Yes, in fact, the threat perception is there at both ends. So let's say you're a leader who's being encouraged to groom their successor, and I'm the person who's being groomed. Both of us would feel threatened, because I'd feel threatened by the fact that, oh, somebody's watching and evaluating me. Maybe they want to send me out of the organization and get a better, cheaper version of me to do my job. And your threat perception would be the same. So they want to get rid of me and move this guy up into my role, because the person is coming at a lower cost, maybe is younger and has more productive years ahead of them, and so on and so forth. So I think organizations a lot of times don't have the right reasons to, they don't give the right reasons to the current role incumbents and to the successors themselves. And in fact, that's what this particular slide is trying to decode, that there are benefits to both parties. There are benefits to the organization, there are benefits to the individuals. And as long as we are able to realize this, it's a win-win for both parties. So an organization gets a continuous pipeline where they don't have to spend a whole lot of money and time looking for new folks. They're able to spot talent early and give them a clear roadmap. And organizations like consulting organizations have traditionally done this well, where they put people on a track where you can be an analyst to a partner in less than a decade, and they give the right experiences to folks. And of course, homegrown talent will bring you good amounts of business success, because you've got that continuous flow of people coming in, you've got the right kind of talent, they understand the organization well, and it's a great thing for organizations to have. And of course, for individuals, you have an opportunity to grow your skills. You can have career goals which you can benchmark yourself with, and you'd stay motivated and engaged because you constantly have a lot of developmental activities happening. What's your view about this, Char?
Oh, absolutely. I think that unfortunately, a lot of our employees feel left out of the roadmap discussion because senior leaders are mainly focused on the top leaders of the organization, and their roadmap oftentimes are openly talked about. And oftentimes it's, all levels of the organization need a roadmap, and including our new hires and our less seasoned employees. I think it's a retention strategy to say, you are part of this team and we see a future for you. And, it is not just kept for the not top echelon of the company, because I've seen that really be a downfall. As some of the executive leaders are sitting around saying, well, why is it we have high turnover in our entry level positions? And oftentimes they're baffled why, for example, our nursing department is having just rampant turnover at 22%. Well, those nurses, for example, and I'm just picking on that particular profession, are not seeing a lifelong career at this organization. They don't see developmental opportunities. They don't see a caring or an investment to what their career goals are. And I would say the conversation relative to succession and also promotion in the company is a very important topic. And sadly, this is a very ignored process. And in my experience, I've seen that where only the top 10 to 5% of the company is even talked about when it comes to succession management. And it's an ultimate shame, actually. So I think that as a good talent management people strategist, I think it's good to look at all levels. And yeah, it takes more time to map out that process. But ultimately, I think that it is a competency for each and every leader to look at succession management for each and every employee, and no matter whatever level they're at. And if that person's a low performer, obviously, their roadmap might be leading out of the organization. But at least they have a roadmap.
And Char, actually, speak to that point. We have a question in the chat. What type of development programs have you used in succession planning?
To me, it's I think leaders need to be leaders as coaches. So, from a succession management perspective, to be a coach is to coach others. And to develop a leader to learn how to coach others is going to be essentially giving your gifts and your talents to another individual, and not be so restrictive about sharing your talents and your gifts with your employees. That is not a good leader. I do have a quick story. I do have one of my employees who, what I call one of our top producers, we call her the Rainmaker, if you want to give her some kind of title. I mean, her productivity is out the roof. She can produce. But the reason that was holding her back is because she did not want to coach others. And she self-admitted that she did not want to give up her trade secrets of why she does so well. And we ended up saying, well, you know what? That will prohibit you from promoting yourself with this company. Even though you're one of our top producers, the competency in this company is that you are also a coach as a leader, and that you're going to help others be successful. And just because your numbers are high, that is going to be your roadblock, and you're not going to go any further in our company unless you learn how to coach and mentor and support others to eventually take your place. So that was a crucial conversation. And this literally happened last week. We ultimately promoted that individual because we have faith that she can do it. But we're measuring her performance about how to do that, how to coach other people and mentor their success.
We can't hear you, Sam.
Another question here. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Gotcha.
Okay, great. So, so another common situation that I see a lot in companies is they identify a successor. They may have informed that person that they're next in line and so forth. But then the current incumbent decides to stay in that role, just forever. There's no exit plan for them. And so forth. And so this person that they've chosen as successor is getting impatient, right? And they ultimately may choose to leave the company because of this. They've been told that they're a successor, but that it may never happen. So, what would your advice be in that situation?
Well, I personally would say that the talent that we hire talent that is open for growth and opportunity. And because in our ever-changing industry, my particular company, not to talk about specifically what my company does, but my company is an ever-changing health advocacy company that is constantly in flux. So we cannot hire people that are not looking for growth, change, and potential job transformation. And if they're not willing to be that type of employee, they won't fit in our organization. I often tell my employees, yes, your job title is a health advocate today, but in a year from now, that title is maybe transformed. So if you're not adaptable and open to change in the type of role that you're doing, you're not going to be a good fit. So the discussion actually happens at the time of hire for our company. And I'll say with my traditional background in healthcare organizations, I do feel that I'll just use another example. With one of my healthcare organizations, major healthcare organizations, the role of the LPN was starting to move and was not really needed in that particular healthcare organization. And unfortunately, we had hired so many LPNs, sadly, they needed to be RNs because we needed that kind of skill set. So we had to have a 2-year strategy to either one, help them successfully exit the organization, or two, get the education through our tuition reimbursement program within 2 years to be able to become an RN. And if they weren't able to do that, then sadly they would have to leave the company. That was heart-wrenching. It was not an easy process, but the reality is that was the nature of the business at the time. Now this was about a decade ago. So I guess my lesson from that is that we need to be upfront, honest, transparent, and very direct with our employees that development and growth and potential job change is going to be on the horizon, and that jobs today are going to change rapidly. And it doesn't matter what industry that you're working in, be it technology, healthcare, it's going to change, and it can change in the matter of 6 months. And it's going to change faster and faster and faster. So how as we as a company can champion supporting the sustainability of that employee so that they are not worked out of a job. That is the most compassionate thing to do, with compassion, dignity, and respect, which is our motto as our company, is to help your employees deal with those rapid changes that are going to happen. What are your thoughts, Sumit?
I completely agree, Char. And the bit that you mentioned about having these conversations at the hiring stage itself, I think that's what some of the great organizations do. And one of my favorite examples is that of the erstwhile practices at GE, when it was a much bigger and a much more respected firm than it is today. So they used to say that they've got a 20-year succession plan, and a CEO is 20 years into the making. Of course, with shifting jobs every month or every few months, that may not be a practical reality now. But even now, we've got newer jobs coming up all the time. So a few years ago, jobs like a data scientist, an SEO expert, or media buyers, they didn't exist. So there always are going to be newer jobs in organizations. There always are going to be newer skills needed. And yes, answering what Sam was asking. So what if the incumbent doesn't leave like you expected them to, or if they're just staying stuck there? Then I think you just have to take the pragmatic approach. You have to see whether there's another role that can be opened up for that person, or else you have to be prepared to lose them, but on a good note. So it's like the consulting firm McKinsey does. So so of course they've got a lot of attrition because not everyone makes partner, and then folks who are really talented do tend to leave. Their pragmatic response to that is, it's fine, we're losing employees, but we're gaining clients, because those people would, because of their talent, they would end up somewhere at great positions in the industry. And if you let them leave on a good note, if they've got good things to say about the organization, they would come back as clients, and that's
Right.
always a potential reality as well.
Correct. And we actually hire our employees because we have the beauty of paying full time for part-time hours. We encourage our employees to have other interests and other developments that we expect a portion of our employees will plan to leave in the next 2, 3, 5 years. So one of our retention strategies is that we coach and mentor them relative to their main passions and their interests. And if our company is not offering all of that and their personal goals and ambitions, we positively support it. All we ask is that you're open and honest about what your dreams and goals are, and how can we help you with your ultimate goals and dreams. And if you have to leave our company, great. All we ask is that you give us a notice properly. You help us with your successor. You know, we teach our employees, coach, mentor, support your successors, and we will gladly write you a glowing recommendation letter. We'll gladly give you a positive reference. And we actually have this conversation all the time during our coaching dialogues, as well as even during the hiring process, because we expect with the type of candidates that we hire, they're not going to plan to stay with us for 30 years like they did in the olden days. That's just a very traditional way of thinking. And so far, our employees have been so appreciative. They're not afraid to say, I am going after my master's degree. I want to become a skin doctor, or I want to become a drummer, or I want to become a professional, actress. Our employees all know that we gladly support their next step in their career.
Once again, I think that epitomizes HR with a heart, like you profess. So it's great to see that example, and that's an absolutely fantastic story. And like you rightly said, we used to have a far more traditional approach. We're moving to doing different things and doing things differently as well. So one of the terms that I started hearing when a lot of organizations were investing in succession was the idea of what's called ring fencing. So, which again comes from the olden times when you would prevent scarce resources from being taken away by enemies by placing them inside a protected area and by ring fencing them. So I think smarter companies are realizing that you cannot possibly ring fence people. If they want to leave, there's no way you can put them inside some kind of a fence and prevent them from breaking out. So I see a lot of organizations actively encouraging people to leave if they want to. And that actually has the opposite effect. So almost like Zappos at the end of the orientation, giving people a check and saying, if you want to leave, here's a few $1,000s and we don't want to keep you if you do not think your future lies here. And they've got very, very low attrition rates as a result. So a lot of organizations are surely doing that. And even larger ones like Accenture. So earlier, the done thing was that if the organization is investing in some kind of training, you get tuition reimbursement. If you spend 2 years or 3 years with the organization after getting trained. So Accenture has done away with that. They say that we'll break it up into a payment every month or every quarter. If you leave in between, we will not recover what we've already paid out to you. So it's absolutely fine if you'd like to move on, but of course, we wish you luck as long as you're able to find somebody else who's investing in your training as well. So I think that's how the paradigm is changing. And we've already spoken about the mechanics of the process. So I won't spend too long here, just a very, very quick snapshot of we need to know what are we assessing people on. And we also need to know what are the critical positions across the organization. So not necessarily only the C-suite roles. A critical position could be a data scientist who you cannot live without. So you might have a role where that position is crucial to your success, and leaving that position unstaffed could be a disaster for the organization. Then, of course, you use assessment tools to identify potential successors, and you give them time frames and say that this is the roadmap I foresee for this individual. So there has to be personalization and there has to be customization of the roadmap. It cannot be a one size fits all kind of a plan that all potential successors will have exactly the same experiences. So based on your own ambitions and interests, based on your own current level of competency and the role that you're being seen for, that's how the IDP or the individual development plan has to be made. And like the name says, it's an individual development plan. It's not really a group development or just a painting everyone with the same brush kind of an exercise.
Yeah, I just want to talk about this word about IDP. When I worked with Kaiser, it was near 160,000 employees. And for some reason, it was very difficult to have 100% compliance around having an IDP for every employee. I remember we were trying to measure that. And it kind of baffled me because sitting down and having a coaching discussion with your employee and saying, what are you working on? What are you developing on? How can I support you with that? It doesn't take a lot of time. And ultimately the manager doesn't necessarily need to do all the work. Essentially the leader can say, I identify these competencies or these skill sets that I would really like you to focus on. Here's a list of ideas, and I love the TMA, giving compliments to Andre Blum and the TMA method. There's tools right there that say, you want to focus on this competency. Here is a list of developmental activities, from shadowing to reading a book to focusing. And if the employee can come up with maybe 3 developmental activities during the year and have an open communication with their leader, why is that so time consuming? It should not be time consuming. So it's interesting. I think there is a big barrier to big companies about doing these steps, but it does not need to be that difficult, in my opinion. I think it's about accountability, and accountability to have your leaders as your leaders to focus on supporting your employees to build that developmental pipeline and to build that successor process with an IDP. Sam, you had a thought?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, the IDP, or that's individual development plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I just want to make sure that we have that. But yeah, it doesn't seem to me like this should be something that should be difficult in today's age when we have. I mean, I think a lot of this can be developed by the individual and creating their own career path and what their desires are. Then it can be brought up in their regular one-on-one meetings and how they're moving towards that effort. So I agree with you, Char. I mean, this is something that should be. I think everybody should have one, and it shouldn't be really a cost inhibitor if it's done jointly between the manager and employee.
Well, and I think that in my past, we spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on developmental programs that were company-wide. Whereas today, you look at your smartphone for free, you can get a free masterclass on a particular topic, and it does not need to be a tens and hundreds of $1,000 developmental program. So for example, if you need to improve your presentation skills or your communication skills or your negotiation skills, it's right at your fingertips and practically for free. I mean, if it does cost a little subscription of $14 a month, why not sponsor that? But back to succession management, then what I do is I actually say, okay, employee, I'd love for you to learn about this particular skill, and I'd like you to share it with my team. So every week, my leaders come together and we talk about the things that we've learned. So for example, something really simple. My leaders right now are going through a lesson through Comp Team and learning about through the talent management cycle, how to do a better job with talent acquisition. So I asked in my staff meeting just yesterday, okay, Ashley, what did you learn from that lesson? And she said, well, I learned when I'm doing interviews, I need to talk less. A simple skill, just talk only 20% of the time and let your candidate speak 80% of the time. And then she shared that with her team. She shared that, and then we had an open discussion about it. How are you conducting your interviews around competencies and skill sets and talents? So it does not need to be a difficult, robust process that I've seen in the past.
Absolutely agreed, Char. And in fact, on that note, it's an important question. So we're dealing with a global pandemic right now. We're working remotely with our space being reduced to the size of a computer or a phone screen. So what really has changed? And what are the implications of succession planning in a post-COVID world? So just a few points that I'd like to address here. So one, of course, there are cost pressures. So because of the hit that companies have taken because due to the pandemic, there are cost pressures. Succession planning was already being treated as an optional activity or a good to have, not a need to have by many people. The pressures increased further where there's a focus on consciously reducing the cost of the right kind of talent. So that's one area where succession planning can play an important role. The second, live meetings are on the way out. Remote is the in thing. So earlier talent reviews used to be where everyone gets into a room, locks themselves in for 2 days, phones are turned off or on silent, and you just discuss and debate on every single person who is part of your organization. And that's completely gone out now. So we need to grapple with using smarter tools, using more of technology, and being a little more aware of what we require to groom our successors. And then this also ties in with what we've been speaking about, what are the new skills required for the leaders of the future? So was somebody who was being seen as a potential successor pre-pandemic carry on being a potential successor in our ever shifting world, or would they require some kind of additional skills in their arsenal? And in my view, even if it's the same incumbent, we might have to tweak their developmental experiences significantly for them to reach the next level, or to reach a point where they can be a suitable successor. And lastly, again, I think your story aligns with this one. So this is definitely an HR with a heart kind of a point, where we need to provide those individual coaching experiences. So the leader as a coach concept comes in. They need to talk the language of the needs of the person who's being seen as a successor. So it has to be customized. It has to factor into other challenges that they're facing. It has to take into account the realities of their work life lines being more and more blurred. So these are some of the implications I feel exist, and it'll be great to hear what you think of these, and also some of the prescriptions that we could make in order to address these.
Well, absolutely. I would tell you that I believe ever since all this post-pandemic, I have actually gotten closer to my employees and my leaders, even remotely, than I was just sitting across from a table, and really starting to have these crucial conversations about what they want to do in their life and how they want to be successful. These words on this particular screen, just because I happen to be a company owner and a CHRO, I do talk about things like being strategic. I talk about what is a competency, because a lot of times people don't even know what a competency means. It sounds kind of an HR-ish comment, but what is it around skill set and things that we need to grow and improve upon to do our jobs well. The biases, we talk about bias all the time, and particularly right now, we're really getting hit with it because in some of our locations, there is true bias in our face, like literally personalized bias that's happening. And so we have open and honest discussions, but ultimately just keeping it simple. So I love this dream, how do we simplify how we have conversations and listen. I think we need to stop and keep our ears open and listen to what our employees are thinking, because they're each having a different life experience going through these difficult times right now. And I think that that's only rewarded us in my company more than ever, that we've listened and opened our minds and hearts to what our employees are thinking. So I would hope that any company should do this. And I'm wondering what kind of questions are we getting any kind of questions in regards to our chat,
Yeah.
Sam and Jules?
I wanted to let you finish. But yeah, we're reaching the top of the hour. So if anyone has any questions, please don't be shy. Put them down in the chat box so we can get them answered for you. And no question's a dumb question. And if there's a question you might be thinking of, 5 other people might be thinking of it as well. So don't be afraid to put it in there. We'll try and get it answered for you before the end. And we'll be wrapping it up shortly.
Let me just bring up the for our next week's speaker. Let me see if I can share my screen here. So I wanted to bring up what we have for our next speaker. So Jules, can you tell us a little bit more about this event?
Yeah, so next week, we hope that you'll join us here again. Before I get to that, I just want to say a huge thank you to Char and Sumit. That session was so valuable. There was so many great golden nuggets in there. I was kind of taking notes off screen. So I hope everyone watching also got a lot out of that, because there was so much value in there. And then for next week, we have digital disruption in leadership development with Meredith Mass. So it'll be the same time next week. So just to give you the heads up of what we've got going on next week, put it in your calendar and hopefully we'll see you there.
Great. Thank you. I also want to point out a couple other things that our sponsor here for the People Strategy Forum is the TMA method. And as part of your attendance today, if you'd like to see or learn more what the TMA method is about, we're happy to set you up with a free assessment. And then we can also meet up with you to go through that assessment and see and show you how the coaching process works with that. And with that, you'll learn a little bit more about how we can apply succession planning to that particular aspect as well. So at this time, I would like to just hear or bring up a few questions for at the top of the hour. And I know Andre reached out to me during the session and mentioned something that was brought up during the International Forum yesterday, the workshop, and it was relating around the how can we really champion for our successors. And and it came about in that question I had about what happens if there's not a succession opportunity that comes up, and what can we do? And he reminded me that what we can really do is champion that particular individual among our network of suppliers and people that are our partners in business. I mean, as we know, we have our main line of business that we're supporting our clients, but we have a network of suppliers and other clients and so forth. That is our trusted network where we can champion our best people. And if there's not an opportunity at our company, perhaps there's an opportunity at one of our partner companies. And having that trusted network will help those, not just that element of sharing, because perhaps that partners or our partners will share their talent with us as well, but we'll create a great experience and more experiences for our people to where they may come back at a future day and help as part of our leadership or critical role. So let's see, do we have any other questions here in the
last chance to get them in?
Yeah. Oh, and I did make a comment here and earlier in the session and brought up David Needham once again from OHOS, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Char and Sumit, because David Needham really believes in getting the feedback from the entire organization on who should be the next successor. And I know a lot of times companies are looking at this from top down when they're thinking about their product and their company and risk factors and so forth when they're thinking about successors. But what is the role of the coworker and determining the successor for a company?
I think that is in the right culture that has a transparency culture and a trusting culture that has psychological safety. I think that's an excellent idea. I think that if a culture is not at that place yet, that can also be a bit risky. So I would say if an organization is ready to have that kind of culture and be able to nominate potential successors, great. But let's make sure that the organization is in a place that is ready for that kind of thing. Because I've seen in several of the big corporations I've worked in that there is a lot of favoritism and politics that occur in major organizations. So if your organization's in a healthy place and can do that, I think it's a fantastic idea.
And I think that's where a 360-degree assessment comes in, where you do get feedback from your peer group and even your subordinates, and you get ranked on your or rated on your competencies by those people. So wherever, like Char said, psychological safety exists, they can be honest without any fear of retribution, and they can candidly share feedback about what your developmental needs should be. So in a way, they are contributing to the successor identification or the succession building process.
That's a good point, Sumit. Yeah, I think the determining readiness. I mean, sometimes from a leadership or management level, there may not be good feedback on how that person is interacting with their peers or subordinates in the organization, and getting that feedback can be critical. Yeah, so I think that's a good point. Thank you, Sumit.
In any case, I think a 360 is a good way to become more self-aware, because almost all leaders I've seen undergoing this process, their self-assessment is significantly higher than what their manager or their subordinates rate them. Mm-hmm. So it's a good way to show yourself the mirror and say that, oh, hey, it's not, the feedback's not as great as I thought it would be. So maybe I do have a lot to learn.
Great. Well, here we are. We're at the top of the hour. So I forgot to launch this poll earlier. So I'm going to bring this poll out now. If anybody would like to learn more about this topic or talk to Sumit or Char in greater detail about the discussion, feel free to sign up here. Also, if you'd like to try out that TMA assessment and get a free consultation around that and learn a little bit more about the tool, you can do that here as well. Or you can reach out to us and sign up at compteam.net, or just reach out via email at sam@compteam.net. I'll be happy to take that and get you going on that process. So once again, thank you so much, Char and Sumit, for a wonderful conversation. And thank you, Jules, for keeping us on track. All right.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks,
Thank
Jules.
you.
Great.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. You have a wonderful week.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.